Previously, Zon discovered that Zhao had taken his loot from the Black Veil mission. After leaving, Zon arrived at Zhao's building and called for him. One of Zhao's members attacked Zon, accusing him of acting arrogantly, but Zon quickly slapped him to the ground. Zhao then showed up, and Zon stated that he should be allowed into the vault since Zhao had taken his loot. Zon promised he would only take what he could carry in his hands. Zhao, thinking that Zon wouldn't be able to take much, agreed. Zon, however, simply looked at his ring with a knowing smile. Now to this week's chapter. The scene shifts to the Deep Blue City Guardian Organization vault, where Zon enters alone, leaving Yue, Zhao, and their group waiting outside. One of Zhao's group members nervously called out, noting that Zon had gone inside and wondering if he might cause trouble, given the vault's collection of expensive items. Zhao, however, remained calm, explaining that the vault held tens of thousands of items. If Zon couldn't recognize what he was looking at, he wouldn't know what was valuable or worthless. He added that Zon had only recently graduated from the academy and would have no idea what he was dealing with. Zhao added with an evil grin that even if Zon could recognize a few valuable items, there was only so much one could carry into hands. He thought smugly that Zon hadn't considered this carefully and would ultimately lose more in this trade than he'd gain from the Black Veil mission. The member was still uneasy about Zhao's decision but didn't want to argue, so he agreed, saying that Boss Zhao was likely right. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone might be helping Zon. The message from the higher-ups had seemed strange, and he wondered if Zon had known all along this would happen. Meanwhile, inside the vault, Zon pulled out the treasure appraisal book and began reading, glancing around to see if any descriptions matched items in the vault. He paused, though, simply to admire the sheer number of incredible treasures spread out before him. Zon thought to himself how fortunate he was to have brought the book his second senior brother had given him. Without it, he wouldn't have had a clue about what he was looking at. As Zon scanned the vault, his eyes landed onto items. He quickly flipped through his book and identified the first one as the limb of a third-tier insectoid cadaver ant. The second was a bone wing from a fifth-tier insectoid ghost butterfly. Zon then spotted an eternal winter flower and a branch-linked grass, but something hanging on the wall suddenly caught his eye. Curious, he wondered what it could be. He quickly flipped through his book and discovered that the item was the shell of a sixth-tier wall crab. According to the book, this shell was a key material for forging a full set of defensive gear. Zon smiled as he admired the incredible items around him. He then raised his hand, where a ring gleamed on his finger. With a wide grin, he activated the ring, laughing as it began to pull all the items into it. "I'll take it all," he commented, as the treasures were sucked into the ring. An hour passed, and Zhao glanced at his watch, growing increasingly irritated. He muttered that Zon should have already come out, frustrated by the delay. Suddenly, a foot stepped out from the vault, and a voice called out, thanking everyone for waiting. Zhao looked over just in time to see Yue rush into Zhan's arms. One of his members, looking surprised, commented that Zon had left the vault. Meanwhile, Yue asked Zon how things went in the vault and if he had found what he was looking for. Zon simply replied that he had a few surprises but would save them for later, telling her he would share everything once they got home. As they began to head back, Zon remarked that it had been fun. Yue, thinking that they were heading home, decided she had to do her best to win him over. The same member who had been suspicious of Zhan's actions questioned why Zon hadn't taken anything from the vault. He wondered if his previous thoughts about Zon being prepared were true. Hearing his teammates' comment, Zhao decided to take matters into his own hands. He pulled out his phone, ready to call the manager to inquire about what Zon had actually taken. He then questioned the manager about what Zon had taken and what he had been doing for the whole hour in the vault. The manager replied that Zon had indeed taken items, but Zon couldn't hear him clearly and thought the manager said Zon had taken 5 items. He asked the manager if he was saying that Zon had only taken 5 items. Zhao's expression darkened with an evil grin as he processed the information, thinking that 5 items were not a big deal and he could still manage that. He even planned to have Zon pay him back with interest for everything he had taken today. However, the manager's next words made Zhao freeze. He clarified that Zon hadn't taken just 5 items, but had cleared out 50% of the vault's contents. He screamed back, questioning if what the manager was saying was true. The manager confirmed again, and Zhao became enraged, wondering how this could have happened. He screamed at the manager, demanding an explanation, but the manager, unfazed, stated that Zhao was being ungrateful for everything he had done for him and dared to shout at him. Then, the manager hung up. The same member questioned how Zan dared to take so much as he glanced at Zhao. Zhao, already furious, was seething after hearing that Zan had taken 50% of the vault's contents. The manager had hung up on him, and Zhao fumed, thinking Zan had gone too far. He realized the vault wasn't his, and he only had access to it. If Zan had taken a few items, Zhao could have easily covered it up, but now that half of the vault was gone, there was no way to hide it. Growing more enraged, he muttered that the organization would not let Zan off the hook for this. He knew he had to inform them of the situation, but he also needed to make it look like he had nothing to do with it or come up with a convincing cover story. Zhao looked over at his member and commanded him to get in touch with the higher-ups and inform them about what was happening, while he tried to think of a way out of this situation. The member, however, replied that he had already contacted the higher-ups and said they responded with only 3 words. Confused, Zhao asked what those 3 words were. The member replied that the response was simply, "He did well." Zhao's face turned to confusion as he struggled to understand why the higher-ups did nothing about the current situation. Meanwhile, the member thought that his earlier suspicions about someone helping Zan were likely correct. The scene shifted to the place where Yue and Zan were staying. Zan took off his ring and placed it on the table in front of him. With a smile, he clasped his hands together, stating that Zhao wouldn't be so cocky after he found out who had blocked him at the vault. He thought about all the items he had obtained, feeling satisfied with his haul. Meanwhile, Yue watched him, a determined look in her eyes, thinking that this was her chance. Yue walked up to Zan, draped in only a towel, her body partially covered. She stated that it was getting late and suggested that they should head to bed together. Zan blushed as he looked up at her, his words caught in his throat. He was about to question what she meant by together, but Yue moved closer, ignoring his confusion. She confessed that she had been worried about losing him ever since the battle with the Black Veil monster and wanted to get stronger. With a teasing smile, she sat on top of him, blushing slightly. She playfully said that tonight, no matter what, she wouldn't let him escape until she completed her contract with him. Zan was left speechless, unsure of how to react to her bold move. Just as Yue was about to remove her towel, the door to the room suddenly crashed open. Standing in the doorway was a lady, half asleep, rubbing her eyes as she questioned, "Why are you making so much noise so late at night?" Her voice was groggy, and it was clear she had been woken up by the ruckus. Zan froze, completely caught off guard by the unexpected interruption. Yue, equally surprised, quickly grabbed her towel, trying to cover herself, her face flushed with embarrassment. She quickly got up from being on top of Zan, feeling embarrassed about what was about to happen. Looking down, she questioned when someone else had started living there, as they had been there for a while and had never seen her. Meanwhile, Zan was still in shock, not only from what Yue had been about to do but also from the current situation. Zan then asked her who she was, and she smiled, responding that he had been staying in her grandfather's house and had no idea who she was. She thought to herself that she had finally gotten to meet him, just as her grandfather had told her. Zan, still trying to piece things together, then questioned if she was the granddaughter of his master. Meanwhile, Yue couldn't help but think about how this unexpected visitor had completely messed up her plans. She then pushed her hair behind her ear with a hand and said that he was correct, introducing herself as Li Lingjun. She added that he must be Zan, trying her best to leave a good impression. The system then revealed information to Zan, surprising him. It stated that Li Lingjun was an E-level contract spirit but also noted that he had the ability to upgrade her to a divine weapon. Zan was now aware of the option before him, as he saw the potential for her to evolve into something far more powerful. Suddenly, Zan realized that Li Lingjun wasn't wearing a bra, and he quickly covered his eyes, questioning her if she should be dressed like that in front of a guy. Li Lingjun, unfazed, casually explained that she was at home and could be comfortable. She added that it even helped maintain her creative mindset. Yue, still a bit confused, questioned what she meant by that. Li Lingjun smiled and, with a playful glint in her eyes, asked if her grandfather hadn't told them that she was the #1 best-selling author online. Li Lingjun then grabbed Yue by the arm, apologizing for interrupting and questioning her if she was going to continue with Zon. Yue blushed, unsure of how to proceed with Li Lingjun there. When Yue didn't respond, Li smiled, thinking back to what her grandfather had told her that Zon could help her, though he hadn't explained how. So, she decided her best move was to win him over first. She turned to Zon, her eyes sparkling with excitement, and said with a playful tone that it would be her turn to have some fun now. Zon, still trying to process everything, wondered what exactly was going on. As Li walked towards Zon, Yue grabbed her shoulder, questioning how she could even think about having fun with him when she barely knew anything about him. Yue also wondered how Li could have no emotional attachments. Li looked back at her and asked what she meant by emotional attachments, stating that all she wanted was to make a contract with Zon. Yue, still looking at her, asked if that was all she wanted from him. Li confirmed, saying that was the only thing she was after and questioned what else she could possibly want. Yue stopped questioning her, thinking that if that was all Li wanted, then it was fine. However, she couldn't help but wonder if Li was planning to fulfill just the first part of the contract or if she intended to complete the whole thing. Yue assumed Li would only focus on the first part. Meanwhile, Zon explained to her that she possessed a divine weapon and that if she formed a contract with him, he could use his skill, Divine Radiance, to help unlock her divine weapon. She looked at him, questioning whether he really could help her. As she thought about her grandfather's words, she began to understand what he had meant by how Zon could help her. Excited, she eagerly stated that they should make the contract right away and began unbuttoning her shirt. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and like. It really helps me out.